You're listening to the low end of the dial. Somewhere down where the numbers get close together and the stations get a little harder to find. It's 1:15 in the morning, and the city outside this window has gone soft around the edges. The street lights are doing what they always do at this hour, just glowing. Not for anyone in particular, just glowing because that's their job and they don't know how to stop. There's a light rain, not much. Just enough to put a shine on the pavement and a halo around each of those lights, so the whole street looks like it's been gently wrapped in something. I've got the board lit up in front of me, a few green lights, a couple of red ones. That warm little row of sliders that I haven't touched in a while because the music is doing what it needs to do, and the night is doing what it needs to do, and I'm just here. Sitting in this chair that's been sat in by every man who's had this shift since before I started. The cushion knows me by now. The armrest knows where my elbow goes. There's coffee. There's always coffee. This cup has gone past warm and into that territory where it's still drinkable, but only just, and I don't mind. At this hour, coffee isn't really about drinking. It's about holding. It's about having something warm between your hands while the building sleeps around you, and the hallway outside the studio door is dark and empty, and the only sound, if I stop talking, is the low hum of the equipment, and somewhere behind that, the rain. I was thinking tonight, and I'm not sure what started it. Maybe it was that last record. The way it faded out so slowly you couldn't quite tell where the music ended and the silence began. I was thinking about music. Not music the way I think about it now. Sitting here behind a microphone with a stack of records and a schedule to keep. But music the way it used to find me. The way it used to just appear. In the ordinary run of a day. When I was a boy. When I wasn't looking for it and didn't know I needed it. And there it was, coming from somewhere, floating through the air like it had always been there, and I'd only just noticed. Because that's the thing about music when you were young. You didn't go to it. It came to you. It arrived. It drifted in through open windows and screen doors and across parking lots and down hallways and out of cars and off of porches, and you didn't choose it and you didn't buy it and you didn't press a button to make it start. It was just part of the air, part of the weather, of being alive in a particular place at a particular time. And I've been sitting here tonight, in the quiet between records, and I've been remembering some of those times. Not the songs themselves. I'm not going to sit here and name songs for you, because that's not what this is about. It's about the way the music felt when it reached you, the temperature of it, the texture of it, the way it mixed with whatever else was happening, the smell of cut grass, the heat of a summer afternoon, the sound of a screen door closing, and became something that wasn't just music anymore. It was the whole moment. The whole feeling of being alive and small and unhurried in a world that seemed to have all the time there was. Let me start with the kitchen, because that's where it started for me, I think. That's the first place I can remember music being a part of ordinary life. Not a concert, not a special occasion, just a Tuesday morning or a Saturday or some unremarkable day that would have been completely forgotten if it weren't for what was playing on the counter. There was a radio in the kitchen, not a big one, a small one, about the size of a loaf of bread, maybe a little smaller. It sat on the counter near the window, between the toaster and the ceramic canister that held sugar, and it was always there. It didn't get moved, it didn't get put away, it had its place, the way the toaster had its place and the salt shaker had its place, and nobody thought about it when it was off, but when it was on, it changed the whole room, the color of it. I want to stay with the color for a moment. I think it was ivory, or off-white. That particular shade of not quite white that everything in a kitchen seemed to be in those years. The toaster was that color. The stove was that color, or close to it. The radio fit right in. It looked like it had been born in that kitchen, like it had grown there between the toaster and the sugar canister the way a plant grows in a pot on a windowsill. It belonged. And the dial on the front, It was a thin line behind a little plastic window, and when you turned the knob, always slowly, because fast meant static, that line would travel along a row of numbers so small you had to lean in to read them. But nobody read them. Nobody in the kitchen was leaning in to check the frequency. You just turned the knob until you found something, and the something you found was usually whatever station came in clearest, which was usually the same station every time, which meant that the radio in the kitchen was almost always playing the same kind of music, the same voices between the songs. The same jingles for the same furniture stores and car dealerships and grocery chains. After a while, you didn't hear those things anymore. They became part of the room, like the hum of the refrigerator, like the ticking of the clock on the wall. But the music you heard, even when it was in the background, even when it was under the sound of dishes being washed or eggs being cracked into a bowl or the morning paper being turned, page by slow page, even then, the music reached you. It got into you through your skin almost, through the soles of your feet on the linoleum floor, through the warm air near the stove. It didn't ask for your attention. It didn't need your attention. It was just there, filling in the spaces between everything else, the way light fills a room without being noticed. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, a song would come on and something would shift. The person at the counter would pause, just for a moment. A hand would stop moving, a dishcloth would rest on the edge of the sink, and there would be this breath, this tiny, almost invisible pause where the music was no longer in the background. It had come forward. It had stepped into the room the way the sun steps into a room when a cloud moves. Not dramatically, not with any announcement. Just a warmth that wasn't there a moment ago and now was. And maybe you'd hear humming, soft humming. Not the melody exactly, something near it, something in the neighborhood of the melody, the way you might walk near a path without being on it, just humming, low and absent and warm. The kind of humming that isn't for anyone. The kind that the person doing it might not even know they're doing. It was just the body responding to the music the way a window pane responds to the wind. Not by choice, but by being in the way of something that moves. I loved that sound, the humming. I didn't know I loved it at the time. I was just a kid eating cereal at the table, and the radio was on, and the kitchen was warm, and someone was humming near the sink, and the morning light was coming in through the window over the counter and falling across the linoleum in a long rectangle that reached almost to my feet. And the cereal was making that small sound cereal makes when it's sitting in milk, that faint, almost inaudible crackling, like something very tiny and very patient, is happening just below the surface. And the humming was there, and the music was there, and the refrigerator was humming too, its own low note, a different key, and the clock was ticking, and the whole kitchen was making this sound, this layered, quiet, accidental sound that was like music itself if you let it be. The linoleum. Let me stay with the linoleum for a moment because it matters. It was cool under bare feet in the morning. That particular kind of cool that linoleum has, not cold, like tile, but cool. Smooth. And it had a pattern. I want to say it was a pattern of small squares, or maybe diamonds in two shades of something. Gold and cream, or gold and brown. Something warm. Something that looked like the 1960s had designed a floor and handed it to the 1970s to live on. And when you sat at the table and the sun was coming through the window, the linoleum would catch the light and go slightly glossy in that rectangle of sun, and you could see every scuff mark, every little line where a chair leg had scraped. Every small imperfection told you this floor had been walked on, stood on, lived on, for a long time. And the music from the radio would be playing, and the humming would be there, and your feet would be on that cool linoleum. And the cereal would be going soft in the milk, and the morning would be happening around you the way mornings happened. Slowly, gently, without any sense that it needed to go anywhere else. That's what music was in the kitchen. It was part of the morning, not separate from it, not something you put on or took off like a coat. It was woven into the air of the room, the way the smell of coffee was woven into it, the way the light was woven into it, the way the ticking of the clock and the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of water in the sink were all woven into it. It was all one thing. One warm, slow, ordinary, unremarkable thing, and that you would not have thought to remember, but that you do remember. You remember it now, lying here in the dark, because the body remembers what the mind lets go of. The body remembers the temperature of the floor, the sound of the humming, the particular quality of light that came through that particular window at that particular hour on those particular mornings that were not special and were not important and were just mornings, just the ordinary start of ordinary days that turned out to be the ones you kept. And then there was the car, music in the car. That was different. That was its own world entirely. Because the car was moving and the music was moving with it, and the two things together, the motion and the sound, created something that neither one could create alone. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm drifting toward the car and the summer and the windows down. And I want to save that. I want to let it come later, the way it would come later in a day. The morning first, in the kitchen, with the radio on the counter and the light on the floor, and then the car, later, when the day was warmer, and the world was wider, and the music was louder, and the wind was in it. For now, I want to stay in the kitchen a little longer. I want to stay with the morning, with the radio, and the counter, and the toaster, and the sugar canister, and the soft sound of the dial being turned, that small mechanical click, 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 as the knob moved through its tiny teeth, each click a different station, a different signal, a different piece of the world coming in through the antenna, which was just a wire, really, sometimes taped to the wall behind the radio. Sometimes strung along the windowsill, sometimes just hanging there, doing its mysterious work of pulling voices and music out of the empty air. Out of the empty air. That phrase. That's what it was. That's what it felt like. The music came out of the air, not out of a machine, not out of a wire. Out of the air itself, as though the air were full of songs, always everywhere, and all you needed was this small box on the counter to let them through. Like opening a window. Like lifting a shade. The songs were always there, floating past, and the radio was just the thing that let you hear them. And the static between the stations. I want to stay with that too. The static. Because the static was part of it. It was the negative space, the silence between words, the dark between streetlights. When you turned the dial, the static would rise, a soft rushing sound like distant water, like wind through a field of dry grass, and then a voice would appear, or a melody, faint and far, and you'd slow down, you'd ease the knob forward by fractions, and the music would come clearer, and the static would fall back, and there was that moment, that perfect moment, when the station locked in and the sound went clean and warm and full, and it was like tuning the world itself into focus, like adjusting the lens of a camera until the blur becomes a face, a flower, a street. The static fell away and the music was there. Present. Whole. Filling the kitchen with something that hadn't been there a moment before. And you'd take your hand away from the dial, gently. The way you'd take your hand away from anything balanced. Anything that might shift if you moved too fast. And the music would stay, and the morning would go on, and the kitchen would be what it was, warm, ordinary, alive with small sounds and small lights and the smell of coffee and the feel of linoleum and the knowledge, which was not a thought but a feeling, deep and quiet and certain that this was enough, that this morning, this kitchen, this music drifting from a small radio on the counter was enough, the coffee smell. I keep coming back to it because it was there. It was always there in that kitchen in the morning. Not the coffee you get now, not the kind with names and origins and specific roasts, just coffee. The smell of it brewing in the percolator. And it was a percolator, always a percolator, that tall silver pot with the glass knob on top that let you watch the coffee bubble up, dark and rhythmic, like a small heartbeat made visible. The smell would start before the music, most mornings. The smell would be the first thing. The percolator would begin its sound, That gentle, irregular, bubbling pock, 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 and the smell would rise with it, filling the kitchen from the bottom up, the way warm air fills a room, starting near the floor and climbing. And by the time the radio was turned on, the kitchen already smelled like morning. The music entered a room that was ready for it, a room that was already warm, already alive, and the light, the morning light through that window. It came in at a low angle early on, almost horizontal, and it lit up the steam rising from the percolator, and the steam would glow, soft, white, curling, and the radio would be playing, and the light would fall across the counter and the dial and the small speaker grill, and for a moment the radio itself looked like it was part of the light, part of the morning, part of the warmth that was gathering in that room, like something you could hold in your hands if your hands were only large enough. I'm sitting here in the studio now, and the rain is still going, and the green lights on the board are still glowing, and the coffee in my cup has gone cold. Truly cold now, not just cool but cold. And I'm thinking about how music was the thread that held the ordinary together, not the extraordinary, not the concerts or the albums or the songs you saved up to buy, but the music that just happened, the music that was already playing when you walked into a room, the music that was on in the background while life went on in the foreground, quiet and unremarkable and perfect in a way that you only understand now, years and years later, sitting in a studio at 1:30 in the morning listening to the rain. I've got another record to put on for you. Something slow, something warm, something that might have come out of a kitchen radio on a morning a long time ago when the light was low and the coffee was brewing and someone was humming near the sink and the linoleum was cool under your feet. And the day hadn't started yet, not really. And everything was still possible, and everything was quiet, and everything was enough. Here it is. Let it play. Let it take you wherever it wants to take you. I'll be here when it's done. I'm not going anywhere tonight. None of us are. That's the whole point of an hour like this. There's nowhere to go and no reason to get there, and the music is playing, and the rain is falling, and the night is doing what nights do, which is hold everything gently and ask for nothing in return. Let it play. You're still here. Good. I'm still here too. That was a nice one, wasn't it? The way it ended. Just the bass, walking slowly down, one note at a time, like someone going down a staircase in the dark, feeling for each step with their foot before committing their weight, and then silence. And now my voice, again, coming out of your speaker, the way voices used to come out of that kitchen radio, not asking for anything, not building toward anything, just here, filling the space between one song and the next. I was talking about music in the kitchen, the morning radio, the percolator and the linoleum and the light. And I want to keep going, but I can feel the night pulling me in another direction now. Toward the afternoon, toward the car, toward the kind of music that came with windows rolled down and warm air moving through the car in waves, bringing the smell of asphalt and cut grass and something sweet from a bakery or a garden, and the radio, a different radio now. The car radio with its own dial, its own static, its own way of pulling the world in through the antenna on the fender. But that's for another stretch of the night. That's for later. For now, I want to let the kitchen rest. I want to let the morning sit where it is, warm and undisturbed, the way it sat all those years ago when nobody thought to take a picture of it or write it down because it was just a morning. Just coffee and light and music and the cool touch of linoleum under bare feet. Just that. Just enough. The rain is still falling outside the studio window. The streetlights are still glowing. And somewhere out there, somewhere in the dark, in a house on a quiet street, in a kitchen that won't be used again until morning, there's a radio on a counter, sitting between a toaster and a sugar canister, its dial dark, its speaker silent, waiting, just waiting for someone to reach over and turn the knob and let the music in again. But that's hours away. For now, the kitchen sleeps. The house sleeps. And maybe you're almost there too. Almost to that place where the thinking stops and the breathing slows, and the music, all the music you've ever heard, every song that ever came through, every radio in every room you've ever been in, all of it folds down into something quiet, something warm, something you don't need to name or remember, because your body already knows it. Your body already has it. It's been there all along, playing softly just below the surface, like that cereal in the milk, crackling gently, patiently, at the edge of hearing. Let it play. Let it all play. I've got more for you. I've got the car and the summer and the windows and the wind. I've got the porch and the evening and the sound of a song coming from a house you walked past on a street. You can almost see if you close your eyes, which maybe you already have, which maybe you did a long time ago. And that's fine. That's more than fine. That's exactly where you're supposed to be. I'll put on another record. Something slow. Something that doesn't need you to listen. Something that will be there whether you hear it or not, playing softly in the room, the way music played softly in all those rooms, all those years ago, when you were young and the world was wide and the mornings came one after another like waves, warm and easy and full of light. Here it comes. Let it come. That was a nice one. The way the guitar just kept going at the end, repeating the same 3 notes over and over, getting softer each time, like someone saying good night and then saying it again, and then saying it one more time from the hallway. I like records that don't know how to stop. I like the ones that fade instead of finish, the ones that leave you wondering if they're still playing somewhere, out past the edge of hearing, going on without you. It's coming up on 2 o'clock now. The rain has eased a little. Not stopped, just eased. The street outside the window still has that shine to it, that wet mirror look that makes the city seem like it's floating just slightly above itself. The traffic light at the corner is cycling through its colors for no one. Green, yellow, red, green, yellow, red. Doing its job. Faithful to the pattern even when the intersection is empty. There's something I like about that. Something patient about it. I was telling you about music, about the way it used to find you in the ordinary run of a day when you were young. And I was in the kitchen, the morning radio, the percolator, the light on the linoleum, the humming near the sink. And I said I'd come back to the car, to the afternoon, to the way music sounded when it came through a car radio with the windows down and the world moving past at 30, 35 miles an hour. Which is how fast the world moved in those days, on those streets in the summer, when no one was in a hurry to get anywhere, because anywhere was already here. The car. Let me start with the car itself, because the car was part of the sound. The car was part of the music, whether it meant to be or not. It was big. The cars were big then. You know that. You remember that. You sat in the back seat, and there was room, real room, between you and the door. Between you and the front seat, between you and the other side. The back seat of a car in those years was a room, a small room, upholstered in something that was either vinyl or cloth, depending on the car. And in the summer, the vinyl was hot. I want to stay with that for a moment, the heat of the vinyl. Because if it was a vinyl seat, and it was summer, and the car had been sitting in the sun, in a parking lot, in a driveway, anywhere the sun could get to it, then the seat was hot. Not warm. Hot. The kind of hot that made you pull your legs up for a second when you first sat down. That made you shift and squirm until the vinyl cooled beneath you. Which it did, gradually, as your body gave its coolness to the seat, and the seat gave its heat to your body. And the two of you came to an agreement, a temperature somewhere in the middle, and then you could settle. Then you could stay. And the smell of a car in summer. Vinyl and heat, and something metallic from the dashboard, and something sweet from the air freshener that hung from the rearview mirror, that little cardboard tree, green or yellow, that had long since stopped smelling like whatever forest it was supposed to smell like, and now smelled like itself, like a memory of sweetness, faded and familiar. And under all of that, the smell of gasoline, faint from the world outside, from the stations you passed and the exhaust of other cars and the general petroleum atmosphere of a summer road. The windows would go down, not with a button, with a crank. A chrome handle, or a black plastic one that you turned in circles, and the glass would lower slowly, mechanically, with a sound like... I don't know how to describe it, except to say it was a sound that belonged to the motion. A low, smooth, grinding sound that meant air was about to enter the car. And when the window was down, all the way down, or even halfway, the air came in. Moving air. Air that smelled like the road and the grass and the distance, and the radio was on. The car radio. That was its own instrument. It had its own sound, different from the kitchen radio, different from any other radio, because it was playing inside this particular space, this sealed, upholstered, moving space, and the sound bounced off the vinyl and the glass and the metal dashboard and came back to your ears changed, coloured by the car itself, and mixed with the wind. Because with the windows down, the wind was always in the music. The wind was the second voice in every song. It would rise and fall as the car sped up or slowed down, and the music would be there underneath it or on top of it, or woven through it, and you couldn't separate the two. The song and the wind and the hum of the engine and the sound of the tires on the road, they were all one thing. One continuous, blended, moving sound that was the sound of summer. The sound of going somewhere. The sound of being inside a car on a warm afternoon with the windows down and the radio on, and nothing in the world that needed to happen except this. The dial on the car radio. It was different from the kitchen radio. It was set into the dashboard, usually in the center, and it had a wider window, a wider band of numbers, and the knob was bigger, a thick chrome knob that felt solid under your fingers, that turned with a satisfying heaviness, like it knew its own importance. And the numbers on the dial were lit from behind, even in the daytime, a soft green or a soft amber. And when you turned the knob, the needle, that thin red or white line, would sweep across the dial like the hand of a clock, slow and deliberate, and the stations would come and go. Out on the highway, not the interstate, not the big road, but the two-lane road, the back road, the road with fields on both sides and a farmhouse every quarter mile, and a sky that went all the way to the ground. Out on that kind of road, the stations came and went differently. They faded. That's the word. They faded in and they faded out, the way towns do when you're driving through the country. You'd pick up a station and it would be clear for a while, 10 minutes, 15, and the music would be strong and the signal would be solid, and the DJ would be talking about something local, a county fair, a used car lot, a church supper on Saturday. And then, gradually, so gradually you almost didn't notice, the static would start to creep in. At the edges first, a little hiss behind the music, like sand in the wind, and then more, and then more. And the station would thin out, the way a road thins out when it gets far from town, and the music would start to waver, and the DJ's voice would break apart, and then it was gone. Just gone. Just static. And you were between stations the way you were between towns, in that open space where nothing reached you except the wind and the road, and the hum of the tires, and the big, wide, empty sound of the air itself. And someone would reach for the dial. A hand would go to the knob. And the searching would begin again. That slow sweep across the band, listening for the next signal, the next clear spot, the next voice or melody to emerge from the static like a house emerging from the fog. And there, a trumpet. A few bars of something with a trumpet, faint at first, then stronger. And the hand would stop, and the dial would hold, and the trumpet would fill the car, brassy and warm, and whatever song it was would play. And you'd settle back into the seat, back into the vinyl that was no longer hot, that had become your temperature. And the music would carry you forward, down the road, past the fields and the farmhouses and the grain elevators standing tall and silver against the sky. The sky. I want to stay with the sky for a moment. Because the sky through a car windshield in summer, or through the side window, the one with the glass all the way down, the one where your elbow might be resting on the door, that sky was part of the music too. It was enormous. It was blue the way only summer sky is blue, not the pale blue of morning or the deep blue of evening, but the full, saturated mid-afternoon blue that seemed to go on above you forever, so far above the car and the road and the fields that it made everything on the ground seem small and gentle and temporary. And the clouds, if there were clouds, were the big white ones. The ones that looked like they'd been piled up by hand, layer on layer, bright white on top and darker underneath. Drifting slowly across that blue, in a direction you couldn't quite determine. Moving the way the music moved, unhurried, untroubled, going wherever they were going because there was time. There was always time. And the music played, and the wind came through the windows, and the road unrolled in front of the car like a ribbon being laid down, straight and smooth and grey, with a yellow line down the centre that went on and on and on until it disappeared into a shimmer of heat at the horizon. That watery mirage that always sat at the far end of a summer road, always retreating, always just out of reach, like the end of a song you don't want to end. The heat mirage. Let me stay with that. Because it was a strange and beautiful thing, that shimmer. It sat on the road maybe a half-mile ahead, and it looked like water. It looked like someone had poured a silver lake across the pavement, and you were driving toward it, always driving toward it, and it was always the same distance away. You never reached it. You never drove through it. It was always there, ahead of you, promising something cool and liquid in the middle of all that heat. And the music from the radio played over it like a soundtrack, and the wind carried the music out through the open windows and scattered it across the fields. And somewhere behind you, in the air you'd already passed through, the notes of whatever song was playing were still hanging there, dissolving slowly, the way a contrail dissolves in the sky behind a plane. The music didn't just exist inside the car. It trailed behind you. It marked where you'd been. Every song was a place on the road. Every melody was a mile marker. And the wind. I keep coming back to the wind because it was insistent. It was the one thing you couldn't turn off, not with the windows down, and it shaped everything. It shaped the music by adding its own sound, that rushing, that constant soft roar that was louder when the car went faster and softer when it slowed. And it shaped the feeling of the music by moving the air around you, by touching your skin, by lifting your hair, by pressing against your face when you leaned toward the open window. The wind made the music physical. You didn't just hear a song in the car with the windows down. You felt it. It was on your skin. It was in the warm air that moved across your arms and your face and the back of your neck. The music and the wind and the warmth, they were all one sensation, one continuous experience of moving through the world with sound. And sometimes the song would be slow, a slow song on a summer afternoon in the car, with the windows down and the fields going by. A slow song that seemed to match the pace of the clouds. A slow song with a voice in it, a low, easy voice, a voice that sounded like it was in no hurry, like it had all day, like it was singing from a porch somewhere in the shade with a glass of something cold and nowhere to be. And that voice would float through the car, mixed with the wind, and the afternoon would seem to stretch, the way taffy stretches, pulling longer and longer without breaking. And the road would go on, and the sky would go on, and the song would go on, and there was no difference between them. The road was the song. The song was the road. And you were in the back seat, or you were in the front seat, and it didn't matter, because you were inside the music. And the music was inside the afternoon, and the afternoon was inside the summer. And the summer was inside something larger that you didn't have a name for, but that you recognized. Even then, even as a kid, as the feeling of being completely, entirely, perfectly where you were supposed to be. The gas stations. I want to mention the gas stations, because they were part of it too. The car would pull in, not to a modern place, not to anything with a convenience store or a canopy or a digital sign, but to a gas station. 2 pumps, a small building with a window and a rack of oil cans and a man in a shirt with his name on it. And when the car stopped and the engine stopped, the music kept going. The radio was still on. And without the engine, without the wind, without the sound of the tires on the road. The music was suddenly different. It was clearer. It was closer. It was just the song and the car and the warm, still air, and you could hear every instrument, every note, every breath the singer took between phrases. And outside the car, you could hear the gas pump clicking, that rhythmic mechanical clicking as the numbers turned over on the pump, gallons and cents, and the gas cap was off, and the smell of gasoline was strong. Not unpleasant, just strong. That sharp, sweet, chemical smell that belonged to gas stations, the way the smell of popcorn belonged to movie theaters. And the pump was clicking, and the music was playing, and a fly was buzzing against the windshield, bumping against the glass in that determined, aimless way that flies have, and it was hot. Still hot. The heat of the afternoon pressed down on the car like a hand, gentle and heavy, and you sat in the back seat, and the vinyl was warm, and the music played, and the world was small and near and detailed in a way it hadn't been when the car was moving. That stillness, when the car stopped and the music kept going, that was a different kind of listening. That was the kind of listening where you heard the song as itself, not as part of the wind and the road and the motion, but as itself, its own thing, with its own shape and its own weight, sitting in the warm air of the car like a piece of furniture, like something you could walk around and look at from different sides. And maybe the song ended while you were sitting there at the gas station, and the DJ's voice came on, low and warm and local, talking about the weather or the temperature or the time, and his voice was the voice of the place you were in, the town you were passing through, the particular latitude and longitude of that gas station on that road on that afternoon, and you were there, you were nowhere else. And the music and the voice and the heat and the gasoline and the fly on the windshield were all right there with you, and it was enough, it was all enough. And the windows of the gas station. The glass was smudged usually, and behind it you could see the dim interior. A counter, a cash register, a rotating rack of maps, the kind of maps that folded out into sheets as big as a tablecloth, covered in tiny red and blue lines that were roads and highways and routes that went places you'd never been. And on the wall behind the counter, a clock. A round clock with a plain face, ticking along, measuring the afternoon in its steady, indifferent way. And the radio inside the station, because there was always a radio inside the station too, was playing something different from the radio in the car. A different station, a different song, and for a moment, sitting in the car with the door open or the window down, you could hear both. Two songs at once, two melodies overlapping, neither one winning, neither one losing, just coexisting the way two conversations coexist in a crowded room, each one making its own sense to the person listening to it, and together making a kind of accidental music. A duet that no one intended and no one would remember, but that was, for those few minutes at that gas station on that summer afternoon, the actual sound of the world. The dial would drift sometimes, on long drives. You'd have a station locked in, good and clear, and then the road would curve, or you'd drop into a valley or a hill would come between you and the tower, and the station would waver, just a little. A slight flutter in the signal, like a candle flame in a draught. And the music would ripple. That's the only word for it. The sound would ripple, the way a reflection ripples when you touch the water. And for a moment the song would be there, and not there at the same time. Present and dissolving, real and ghostly. And then the road would straighten, or the hill would pass, and the signal would come back, clear and whole, and the song would be solid again. And you'd feel a small relief, the kind of relief you feel when a cloud moves off the sun and the warmth returns. I'm sitting here in the studio, and the rain has mostly stopped now. Just a few drops on the glass, just the last of it, tapping lightly, irregularly, like fingers on a tabletop. The board is still lit. The green lights are still glowing. And I'm somewhere between that kitchen and that car, between the morning and the afternoon, between the radio on the counter and the radio in the dashboard, and the coffee in my cup has gone cold, and I don't mind. Because the night is warm enough, And the memory is warm enough, and the music we've been playing tonight, the music I've been talking about, it's all warm enough. I've got another record for you. Something from the middle of a summer afternoon. Something that sounds like the road. Like the wind through the windows. Like the heat mirage at the far end of the highway. Shimmering, promising something you can't quite reach. Something that sounds like being young, and being in the back seat, and being perfectly, completely content in a way that didn't need a reason and didn't need a name. Here it comes. Let it carry you. Let the wind take it where it wants to go. I'll be here when it's done, still sitting in this chair, still watching the lights on the board, still thinking about all those afternoons, all those roads, all that music that came through all those car radios in all those summers that were long and warm and full of exactly this feeling of moving through the world with the windows down and the music on, and nowhere to be except here, except wherever the road was, except wherever the song was taking you. Let it play. You're still with me. Good. I'm glad. The night is moving the way nights move at this hour. Not fast, not slow, just steady. The way a river moves when you're far enough from the bank that you can't see the current. Only the surface, smooth and dark and going somewhere without any urgency about it. It's just past 2 now. The rain has stopped. The street outside the window is still wet, still shining, but the sky has cleared a little and I can see a few stars between the buildings, small and far and quiet the way stars always are when you see them from inside a city. They don't compete with the street lights. They don't try. They just hang there, doing their own work, keeping their own hours, and if you happen to look up and notice them, that's fine. And if you don't, that's fine too. The board is humming. The coffee is gone. I finished it a while back, the last cold inch of it, and I should make more, but I won't. Not yet. There's something about sitting here with an empty cup. It gives my hands something to do without giving my mouth anything to think about, and right now, I'd rather think about what I've been thinking about, which is music. The way it moved through a day. The way it showed up in the ordinary places, the ordinary hours without being asked. We were in the kitchen this morning, we were in the car this afternoon, and now I can feel it pulling me. Now it's evening. The day is cooling down. The light is changing. The sun is low or already gone, and the world is that color it gets when the heat lets go. That soft amber, almost golden color that doesn't last long, but that stays in your memory longer than it stays in the sky. And the music is different now. It's not coming from a radio on a counter or a radio in a dashboard. It's coming from outside, from other people's houses, from porches and open windows and screen doors that are letting the evening air in and letting the music out, and you are walking or riding your bicycle or just sitting on your own front steps, and the music reaches you the way the smell of someone's backyard grill reaches you, drifting, mixing with the air, arriving uninvited and welcome. Let me start with the walking, because that's what I remember most clearly. Walking in the evening, in the summer, in that hour after supper, when the light was low and the fireflies were just beginning and the sidewalks were still warm from the afternoon, but not hot anymore. Just warm, holding the last of the day's heat, the way a stone holds heat after the sun has moved on. You could feel it through your shoes, through thin-soled sneakers, the kind that were canvas and rubber and nothing else, the kind that let you feel every crack in the sidewalk, every seam, every place where one square of concrete had settled a little lower than the next. You walked, and your feet felt the sidewalk, and the sidewalk was warm, and the evening was warm, and the air smelled like cut grass and charcoal and something sweet from somebody's garden. Honeysuckle, maybe, or the roses that grew along the fence 3 houses down, the ones that leaned over the sidewalk so far you had to duck a little when you passed. And the music. The music was in the air. Not loud. Never loud. It was summer evening loud, which is a particular volume, just enough to carry through an open window, across a porch, down to the sidewalk. Just enough to reach you without overwhelming the crickets, which were starting up now, that slow rhythmic pulsing that would get faster as the night got warmer, or slower as it cooled, as though the crickets were taking the temperature of the air and reporting it back in sound. The music floated on top of the crickets, or under them, or through them. It was hard to tell where one ended and the other began. You'd walk past a house and hear something. A few bars, a melody you almost recognized. It would come through the screen door that was closed but not the wooden door behind it, because the wooden door was open to let the air through, and the screen was just enough to keep the moths out and not enough to keep the music in. The music came right through the mesh, through those thousands of tiny squares of wire, and it crossed the porch. A wooden porch, usually, with a railing and a step and maybe a chair or two, the metal kind that bounced a little when you sat down. And it came down the walk, and it reached the sidewalk, and it reached you, and you heard it the way you'd hear someone calling from a distance. Not the words, just the voice, just the tone, just the shape of the sound. And then you'd pass that house, and the music would fade behind you, not all at once, but gradually, the way a light fades when you walk away from it, dimmer and dimmer and dimmer until it's just a glow, and then just the idea of a glow, and then nothing, and you'd walk on. And the crickets would be there, steady and patient, filling in the silence the way water fills in a hole in the sand. The sidewalk under your feet, the warm air on your arms, the smell of the neighborhood at this hour, which was different from the smell of the neighborhood in the morning or the afternoon. It was softer, damper, greener somehow, as though the grass and the hedges and the flower beds were all exhaling after the long hold of the day, letting go of whatever they'd been keeping in the heat, releasing it now into the cooling air, and the light was going. Not gone, but going. The sky in the west still had color in it. A band of orange, low and thin, like a stripe painted along the bottom of the sky, and the rest was that deep, soft blue that comes just before dark, the blue that makes the trees look black and the houses look like silhouettes and the streetlights look like they've just woken up, just flickered on, still finding their strength. And then, from the next house or the house after that, another song, a different song. A different station, a different record, a different room with a different radio, and this one was louder or softer or closer to the window, and the melody was different, and the feeling was different. And you were walking through a gallery of music, each house its own painting, each porch its own frame, and the sidewalk was the hallway that connected them all. I want to stay with the screen doors for a moment, because the screen doors were important. They were the membrane between inside and outside, between the private sound of a house and the public sound of the street, and they let things through, not just music. The sound of dishes, the murmur of a television in another room, low and blue, the creak of a floor, a cough, a laugh. The screen doors let the life of the house leak out into the evening, and the music was part of that life, mixed in with everything else, not separate, not special, just there the way the lamps were there, glowing warm through the screen, casting their yellow light onto the porch boards in long rectangles that looked like the ones the morning sun had made on the kitchen linoleum. The same shape, the same warmth, but different light, evening light, lamplight, the light of a house that was settled into its night, that was done with the day and resting now, resting the way you rest after a meal, full and quiet and content. And the porches where people sat. Not everyone. Not every night. But some nights, some people would be out on the porch, sitting in those metal chairs or on the porch swing, the kind that hung from chains, 2 chains on each side, attached to hooks in the porch ceiling. And when you sat in it, the chains would creak and the swing would move slowly back and forth. And the creaking had a rhythm, and the swinging had a rhythm. And if the radio was on, inside the house, the music had a rhythm, and all 3 rhythms would overlap and blend into something that was almost like a lullaby, a slow, mechanical, accidental lullaby made of chains and hinges and whatever song was playing on the radio inside. The porch itself had a smell, I don't know if anyone ever talks about the smell of a porch, but it had one. Painted wood. Old painted wood. The paint thick from years of being painted over, layer on layer, each year a new coat on top of the last. So the porch floor had a smoothness to it, a depth, almost a softness. And the paint smelled like summer because you only smelled it in summer, when the heat drew the smell out of the wood the way it drew the smell out of everything. And there was the smell of the yard, the grass, the dirt, the hedge along the side that someone trimmed once a month with hand clippers, leaving small green fragments on the sidewalk that dried to brown by the next morning. And the moths. The moths around the porch light, circling and circling, tapping against the glass, making that soft, papery sound that moths make, which is barely a sound at all, more like the idea of a sound, the ghost of a sound, something you feel more than hear. And the people on the porch, I'm not going to talk about them because this isn't about people, it's about music. It's about the way the music felt in the air. But I'll say this, they were shapes. From the sidewalk, walking past in the evening, the people on the porches were shapes, dark shapes against the warm light of the screen door behind them. You couldn't see faces. You could see the outline of a shoulder, the slow arc of an arm, the orange glow of a cigarette, tiny and bright, like a firefly that had landed and decided to stay. And around those shapes, the music played. It surrounded them. It was the air they were breathing, the same air you were breathing as you walked past. And for a moment, just the moment it took to walk past that house, past that porch, past that swing creaking on its chains, you were in their music. You were inside it. You were sharing it the way you might share the shade of a tree by walking under it briefly without stopping. The fireflies. I mentioned the fireflies and I want to come back to them because they belong here. They belong to this hour, this light, this temperature. They were out now. In the yards, in the spaces between the houses, floating just above the grass, blinking in that slow, irregular pattern that seemed random but probably wasn't, that had some logic known only to the fireflies and the night. And their light was cold, a cold green-yellow light, nothing like the warm amber of the streetlights or the warm yellow of the porch lamps, and it came and went, each one its own small rhythm, its own small pulse. And if you stood still and watched them long enough, the whole yard would seem to be breathing, blinking and breathing. And the music from the nearest house would be playing, and the crickets would be pulsing, and the fireflies would be blinking, and it was all the same thing. It was all the same slow, layered, living rhythm of a summer evening, and the music was just one part of it. No more important than the crickets, no more important than the fireflies, no more important than the warm sidewalk under your feet, or the smell of cut grass, or the creak of the porch swing 3 houses back, still audible, just barely, like a sound you might be imagining, but probably aren't. And then there were the places where music came from that weren't houses. The park, the lake, the backyard where someone had set up a card table and a few lawn chairs and a transistor radio, that small battery-powered box that could go anywhere, that freed the music from the kitchen counter and the car dashboard and let it live outside, in the grass, in the open air, under the sky. The transistor radio. Let me stay with it, because it was a particular object and it had a particular sound, and it mattered. It was small enough to hold in one hand, small enough to fit in a jacket pocket, though in the summer you didn't have a jacket. So it sat on a towel or a blanket or the arm of a lawn chair or the flat top of a cooler, and it played. The sound was thin. I don't mean that as a criticism. I mean it was thin the way a pencil line is thin. Precise, clear, not trying to be more than it was. It didn't have the warmth of the kitchen radio or the fullness of the car radio. It had its own thing, its own quality, which was a kind of bright, focused, slightly metallic sound that cut through the outdoor air like a voice calling across a field. You could hear it from a surprising distance. You'd be walking along the edge of the lake or across the park, and you'd hear it, a song, coming from somewhere, and you'd look, and there it would be, that little box on a blanket, tinny and sure of itself, playing to a circle of lawn chairs and the grass and the sky, and anyone who happened to be near enough to hear. And the lake, music at the lake, that was something. Because the lake had its own sounds, the water lapping at the shore, that small, irregular, intimate sound of water meeting land and falling back and meeting it again, over and over, patient and ceaseless. And the insects, the buzz of something near the reeds, the distant motor of a boat that had gone out earlier and was coming back now, getting louder as it approached the dock, its engine dropping to a low gurgle as it slowed. And the voices of the people on the shore, the murmur of conversation, loose and unhurried, the kind of talk that doesn't go anywhere because it doesn't need to. And into all of this, the transistor radio added its layer, its thin, bright melody, its small voice. And the music floated out across the water the way sound floats across water, farther and clearer than you'd expect, as though the surface of the lake carried it, the way it carried the reflections of the trees and the sky. The water. Let me stay with the water for a moment, because the surface of the lake in the evening was something. It was still, almost still, just the smallest movement, the smallest ripple, caused by the faintest breeze or the last wake from the boat that had come in. And the light on the water was the light of the evening sky, reflected, so the lake was the same color as the sky, that pale gold, that fading rose, that deep blue at the edges. And the music from the transistor radio seemed to belong where the reflections belonged to the water. It sat on the surface. It moved with the ripples. It was part of the lake, the way the light was part of the lake. And if you were sitting on the shore on a blanket on the grass, with your feet in the sand at the water's edge, the music was everywhere. In the air, on the water, in the grass, in the warmth that was still rising from the ground, the last warmth of the afternoon, giving itself up to the cooling evening, the way a sigh gives up the breath that held it. And the smell. The lake had a smell. Every lake has a smell, and they're all a little different. But they share something, a green smell, a wet smell, a smell of water and earth and growing things, of mud and leaves, and the faint, sweet decay of whatever was living and dying at the water's edge, the cattails, the algae, the small organisms going about their business in the shallows. And the charcoal smell, if someone had a grill going. And the bug spray, that sharp, chemical smell that meant summer and outdoors and staying out past the hour when the mosquitoes arrived, which they always did, always at the same time, as though they had a schedule, as though they checked the clock and waited for the light to drop below a certain level before emerging from wherever they spent the day. And the music played through all of it. The transistor radio on the cooler or the blanket, its little speaker pointing up at the sky, playing song after song after song, the DJ's voice between them small and far away like someone talking in another room. And the songs mixed with the water and the insects and the charcoal and the voices and the evening air, and it was all one thing, one warm, slow, fading thing that was the day letting go. The day releasing its grip finger by finger, the way you release a handful of slowly, letting the grains fall through, watching them go, not trying to hold on, because holding on was never the point. The point was being there while it lasted. The point was the music and the water and the light and the feeling of grass under a blanket under your back and the sky above you, going from gold to rose to blue to something darker, something deeper, something that had stars in it if you waited long enough. I'm sitting here in the studio, and the sky outside the window has cleared a little more. I can see a few more stars now between the buildings, small and steady. And I'm thinking about all those evenings, all those walks down all those sidewalks, past all those porches, through all those songs that drifted out of all those screen doors, all those lakes with all those transistor radios playing all those thin, bright melodies across all that still water. All of it gone now, all of it past. But not lost. Never lost. Because it's here, isn't it? It's here right now, in this studio, in this voice, in this hour between 2 and 3 in the morning, when the world is quiet enough to hear the things that happened a long time ago, The things that were never important enough to write down, but were important enough to keep somewhere. In the body, in the bones. In the place where the smell of cut grass and the sound of crickets and the blinking of fireflies and the creak of a porch swing and the thin, bright sound of a transistor radio across a lake all live together. Undisturbed, waiting for a night like this to come back. I've got another record for you. Something that sounds like evening. Something that sounds like the space between one house and the next. The space where the music from one porch fades out and the music from the next porch hasn't started yet, and all you can hear is the crickets and your own footsteps and the warm, quiet, breathing world around you. Let it play. Let the evening settle. I'll be here. I'm always here. At this hour, in this chair, behind this microphone, keeping the light on while the city sleeps. And if you're still awake, that's fine. And if you're almost gone, that's fine too. The music will be here either way. It doesn't need you to listen. It just needs you to let it in, the way you used to let it in, through screen doors and open windows and the thin mesh of a summer evening. When the world was warm and the light was fading and the songs came to you from places you couldn't see, carried on air you could barely feel, and all you had to do was walk slowly and breathe and be there. That's all you have to do now. Just be here. Just breathe. Just let the music in. Here it comes. That record had a way about it, didn't it? The way the strings came in at the end, not building, just arriving, the way fog arrives, low and quiet and everywhere at once. You didn't notice them start. You only noticed they were there. And then the song was over and the strings were gone, and there was just the hiss of the needle in the groove. That soft, circular breathing that a record makes when it's finished but still spinning. And now, here I am again. Still in this chair, still behind this microphone, still watching the city through the glass. It's getting on toward 3. The deepest part of the night. The part where even the streetlights seem dimmer, though I know they're not. They're the same as they were an hour ago. It's the hour that's different. The hour has weight to it now. You can feel it pressing down, not heavily, not uncomfortably, but like a blanket, like the good weight of a quilt on a cold night, the kind of weight that doesn't hold you down but holds you in. We've been somewhere tonight, you and I. We've been in the kitchen with the morning radio and the percolator. We've been in the car with the windows down and the highway stretching out ahead. We've been walking down the sidewalk in the evening, past the porches and the screen doors and the fireflies. And now I want to take you to one more place. A few more places actually, but they're all connected, the way rooms in a house are connected, by hallways and doors you pass through without thinking. I want to take you to the places where you didn't expect music. The places where music was just there, part of the air, part of the building. Part of the experience of being inside a particular place on a particular day, the way the fluorescent lights were there, and the linoleum was there, and the smell was there. The places where nobody chose the music, where nobody owned the music, where the music belonged to the building itself, like the paint on the walls. The department store. Let me start there, because the department store was a world, and the music was part of that world. And you walked into it the way you walked into weather. It was just what was happening around you when the doors opened and the air changed. The air. The air in a department store was different from the air outside. You noticed it the moment the doors closed behind you. It was cool. It was dry. It smelled like, and this is hard to pin down, because it was a mixture, a blend. It smelled like new fabric and perfume and something chemical, something clean, something that might have been the carpet or the ceiling tiles or the air conditioning itself, circulating through ducts and vents, carrying with it the combined scent of every department, every counter, every display, mixed and blended and cooled and delivered to you in one smooth, continuous, invisible stream. And inside that air, the music. Not loud. Never loud. It came from everywhere and nowhere. You couldn't find the speakers. You could look up at the ceiling. The white, gridded, tiled ceiling with its rows of fluorescent lights. and you knew the sound was coming from up there somewhere, from behind those tiles, from small speakers recessed or hidden, but you couldn't see them. The music just existed in the air, the way the cooling existed in the air, disembodied, sourceless, constant. It was there when you walked in, it was there when you walked out, it was there whether anyone was listening or not. And the music itself, it was softened. That's the word I keep coming back to. Whatever the song had been, whatever energy or edge or voice it had originally carried, by the time it reached you in the department store, it had been softened. The way a stone in a river is softened. Not by force, by patience, by time and repetition and the slow wearing away of everything sharp until what was left was smooth and round and gentle. The guitars were replaced by strings. The drums were replaced by something lighter, a brush on a cymbal, a tap on a woodblock. The voice was gone entirely, replaced by a flute or an oboe or a piano that played the melody the way you'd hum it, approximately gently, without any urgency about getting the notes exactly right. And it was everywhere. In the clothing department, where the racks stood in rows and the hangers made that thin metallic scraping sound when you pushed them along the bar, one by one, looking without looking, touching the fabric as you passed. The polyester, the cotton, the wool, each one a different texture under your fingertips, smooth or rough or soft or scratchy. The music played over all of it. It played while hands moved through hangers. It played while feet moved across carpet. It played in the elevator which had its own sound, a mechanical hum and a gentle lurching as it moved between floors, and the doors would open and the music would be there on the new floor too. The same music, the same song, as though the whole building were one instrument, and every floor was a different string vibrating at the same frequency. And the perfume counter. I want to stay here for a moment. The perfume counter near the entrance, where the glass cases held small bottles arranged like a city skyline. Tall ones, short ones, square ones, round ones. Each one catching the light differently, and the air here was thicker with scent, layered and heavy and sweet, and the music played through it, and the music and the perfume seemed to be the same thing. Both of them weightless, both of them invisible, both of them filling the space between you and everything else with something you couldn't touch but could feel. The music smelled like perfume, and the perfume sounded like music. And you moved through both of them the way you move through a dream, slowly, without resistance, without any clear sense of where you were going or why. The escalator. The department store had an escalator, and riding it was its own experience. You'd step on and the stairs would carry you slowly upward, and the music would be playing, and you could see the store below you getting smaller, the counters and the racks and the people moving between them, and the ceiling getting closer and the fluorescent lights getting brighter. And the music was the same up here as it was down there, always the same, continuous, unbroken. A thread that connected every floor, every department, every corner of the building. And you stood on the escalator and you didn't move because the escalator was moving for you, carrying you gently from one level to the next. And the music carried you too, and the two motions, the physical motion of the escalator and the invisible motion of the music, were the same. Both of them taking you somewhere without asking you to walk. Both of them doing the work so you didn't have to. And the five and dime. The five and dime was different from the department store. Smaller, closer, more human somehow, more crowded with things. The aisles narrower, the shelves packed with everything you could think of and a few things you couldn't. Buttons and thread and greeting cards and candy bars and small toys in plastic packaging and school supplies and sewing notions and batteries and light bulbs and things you didn't know the name of and things you didn't need and things you wanted anyway, just because they were there, just because they existed in this small, bright, overstuffed store that smelled like popcorn and plastic and the wooden floorboards that creaked when you stepped on them. The floor of the five and dime. It was wood in the ones I remember. Not polished wood, not new wood, old wood, worn wood. Wood that had been walked on by decades of shoes, scuffed and dented and smoothed by all those feet, and it had a colour that was somewhere between brown and grey, a colour that wood gets when it's been open to the air and the light and the traffic of people for a very long time. And it creaked. Every step produced a creak, a groan, a small complaint from the boards, and the creaking mixed with the music, which came from a radio somewhere behind the counter. Not hidden speakers in the ceiling like the department store, but an actual radio, a visible radio, sitting on a shelf near the register, playing a local station, playing the same station the kitchen radio played, the same station the car radio picked up, the same voices, the same jingles, the same music, and hearing it here, in this store, was like meeting someone you knew in an unexpected place. Familiar, reassuring. A thread connecting this aisle of buttons and thread to the kitchen at home, to the car on the highway, to the whole web of places where this music lived. And the barber shop. The barber shop had music too. The barber shop had a radio on the shelf between the bottles of tonic and the jar of combs soaking in blue liquid, that bright, almost tropical blue that was the colour of barber shops the way amber was the colour of streetlights. And the radio played, and the barber worked, and the scissors made their sound, that quick, precise, metallic whisper of blades crossing and parting, snipping the air and the hair and the quiet. And the music played underneath the scissors the way the bass plays underneath the melody, steady and low and always there. And the smell of the barber shop, the tonic, the shaving cream, the talcum powder that the barber would brush on the back of your neck with a soft, round brush when the haircut was done, a cloud of powder, white and fine, that settled on your skin like the gentlest snow. And the leather of the chair, that big adjustable chair that went up and down with a foot pump, and the chrome of the armrests, cool under your forearms, and the mirror in front of you, showing you yourself, and the shop behind you, and the barber's hands, and the scissors, and the radio on the shelf. All of it reversed, all of it backward. A mirror world where everything was the same but flipped, and the music played in both worlds, the real one and the reflected one, and it was the same song in both. And the waiting room. I almost forgot the waiting room. The dentist's office or the doctor's office, where the chairs were lined up along the wall and the magazines on the table were always a few months old. Their covers curled and soft from being picked up and put down by 100 hands, and the air smelled like antiseptic and anxiety, and the faint, sweet smell of the candy from the dish on the receptionist's counter. Those hard candies in cellophane wrappers, butterscotch or peppermint, that crinkled when you unwrapped them. And the music played. From a speaker in the ceiling or a radio behind the frosted glass window where the receptionist sat, the music played, and it was the softest music of all, the quietest, the most careful, as though the music knew where it was, knew that the people in these chairs were nervous, were waiting, were sitting with their hands in their laps and their thoughts in their teeth, and the music was trying, gently, patiently, without any fuss, to make the waiting easier, to fill the silence with something that wasn't silence but wasn't demand either, something that asked nothing of you. Something that simply occupied the air, the way the fish in the aquarium occupied the water in the tank, that sat in the corner of the waiting room, moving slowly back and forth, orange and white and unhurried, living their small, circular lives behind the glass. The aquarium. I want to stay with the aquarium for just a moment, because it belonged to the same family as the music. It was there for the same reason, to give your eyes something to do, the way the music gave your ears something to do. And the fish moved the way the music moved, slowly, smoothly, in patterns that repeated without being repetitive, circling the little castle or the little bridge or the little diver at the bottom of the tank, and the bubbles rose from the aerator, one after another, steady and rhythmic, a tiny chain of air climbing to the surface and disappearing, and the light in the tank was blue-green and warm, and the music played, and the waiting went on, And somehow, between the fish and the music and the bubbles and the antiseptic smell and the old magazines, the waiting was bearable. The waiting was almost pleasant. The waiting was a kind of rest, a pause in the day when you were not expected to do anything or be anything or go anywhere. You were just there, sitting, waiting, listening without listening, watching without watching, letting the music and the fish do their quiet work. That's what music did in all those places. It did quiet work. It wasn't the main event. It wasn't the reason you were there. It was the thing underneath the reason, the thing behind the thing. The wallpaper of sound that lined every room, every store, every waiting area, every public space where people gathered or passed through or sat still. And you absorbed it the way you absorbed the temperature of the air or the color of the walls, without thinking, without choosing, without knowing that you were taking it in. But you were. Your body was. Your bones were. Every song that ever played in every department store, and every five and dime, and every barber shop, and every waiting room you ever sat in, all of it went in. All of it stayed. Somewhere. In some room inside you that you don't visit often but that you know is there, because sometimes on a night like this a melody will surface, just a few notes, just the ghost of a tune, and you'll feel something. Not a memory exactly, not a thought, a feeling, a temperature, a texture. The smooth chrome of an armrest, the creak of a wooden floor, the cool air of a department store in July, the blue-green light of a fish tank in a waiting room, the soft, round, patient sound of music that was never meant to be remembered but that you remember anyway, because you were there, and it was there, and the two of you shared the same air for a little while in a room that no longer exists, on an afternoon that no one wrote down. I'm here in the studio, and the night is almost done with us. Not quite, but almost. The sky outside the window is still dark, but it's a different dark than it was an hour ago. It's thinner, lighter at the edges. Not dawn. Dawn is a long way off, but the suggestion of dawn, the way a word on the tip of your tongue is the suggestion of the word. It's there. It's coming, but not yet. And I've been thinking, all night I've been thinking about how music was the thread, not the fabric. The thread, the thing that held the fabric together. The kitchen and the car and the porch and the store and the waiting room, those were the fabric, the material of an ordinary day, and the music was the thread that ran through all of it, connecting one room to the next, 1 hour to the next, one moment to the next, so that a day wasn't just a collection of separate things happening in separate places, but was one continuous experience, stitched together by the sound of a radio playing somewhere, always within reach, always filling the air with something that you didn't need but that you needed, that you didn't ask for but that you missed when it wasn't there. And now it's late, and you're in bed probably, and maybe you can feel it, the weight of the hour, the warmth of the blanket, the pillow under your head, the dark around you that isn't empty but full of all the music you've ever heard, playing softly, all at once, in a room you can't see but can feel. The kitchen radio, and the car radio, and the transistor radio by the lake, and the hidden speakers in the department store ceiling, and the radio in the barber shop, and the radio in the five and dime, and the music in the waiting room, and the music on the porch, and the music through the screen doors, and the music in the wind, and the music on the water, and the music in the morning light on the linoleum, and the music in the evening light on the grass. All of it, all at once. Not loud, never loud, just there. A hum, a warmth, a presence that doesn't need your attention, that doesn't need you to listen, that just needs you to be here, in the dark, breathing slowly, letting the night do what the night does, which is hold you the way all those rooms held you, gently, without asking for anything, without expecting anything, without needing anything from you except your presence. That's all the music ever needed, your presence. You didn't have to understand it. You didn't have to know the name of the song, or the name of the singer, or the station it was playing on. You just had to be in the room. You just had to be in the car. You just had to be walking down the sidewalk, or standing in the aisle, or sitting in the chair. The music did the rest. It found you. It reached you. It went in through your ears and your skin and your feet on the cool linoleum and your fingers on the warm vinyl. And it stayed. It stayed longer than you thought it would. It stayed longer than you knew. It's still there. It's still playing in the quiet places, in the deep places, in the places you go when the thinking stops and the breathing slows and the night comes in and you let go of the day, the way you let go of a string on a kite, watching it rise, watching it go. Not sad, not happy, just watching, just breathing, just being here, which is where you've always been, which is where the music has always been, which is enough. It's always been enough. I've got one more record for you, the last one of the night. Something slow and warm and quiet. Something that sounds like the inside of every room you've ever rested in. Something that sounds like a pillow and a blanket and a dark window and a streetlight far away, glowing amber through the curtain, and the faint, faint sound of the world going on outside without you, the way the world goes on, patient and faithful, waiting for you to come back to it in the morning, which you will, which you always do, but not yet. Not yet. For now, the music. For now, the dark. For now, this. Let it play. Let it take you the rest of the way. I'll be here when you're gone. I'll be here when the record ends and the needle lifts and the last sound is the hum of the equipment and the quiet of the studio and the city outside the glass, still and amber and patient. Good night, wherever you are, whatever room you're in, whatever music is playing in the quiet places of your memory. Good night. Here it comes. The last one. Let it come.